Welcome to the Eastgate Podcast. This is
Let's Talk About It
with Lawana, Schrieffer, and Nate Prepelka. We dive into tough questions, real-life challenges, and what it means to walk with Christ. In this episode, we talk about the responsibility of grace. Good morning. My name is Nate. I am the student pastor here at Eastgate.
Hey, this is Lawana. I am part of the board, and I am a life coach.
All right, so we are going to be talking about grace again, this time without Janelle, because we weren't satisfied with her performance.
Our special guest, I don't know.
No, she was great. But we talked about like the power of grace and what grace does and stuff like that. But afterward, we were talking, and we wanted to talk more about the responsibility that comes with grace. One of the things you said, I don't know if I have it written down, was there's a price that was paid.
Yes.
For grace.
Yeah, I loved our conversation with Janelle last week. I think grace is such a major, amazing topic in the Christian life and experience that we get to have. But I also afterwards was like, I reminded me of Spider-Man. Nate and I was talking about this. It says, where there's grace, there's responsibility. Like where there's power, there's responsibility. And grace does empower us in ways. So I really am excited about having this conversation about responsibility because it's equal balance, right? Wherever it's like a flip side of a coin. There's wherever there's good, there's a flip side. There's responsibility or consequences. So it's
right.
You need both.
Yep.
You need both.
But before we get into that, I think we both kind of wanted to kind of readdress our position with this podcast. I think it's especially a fear of mine to come from a place where like I have the information and I'm giving the information out. I think we just wanted to readdress that the purpose of this podcast is to have conversations. You said something really good earlier when we were talking about it.
I like that. I think one of the best things you can have as a Christian is curiosity, and that curiosity keeps you open to learning new things, and that's really what we're on, a journey of learning. And we didn't want to come on as having authority, like we are the authority of these this message or whatever topic we're talking about, but we wanted to have an invitation. It's always an invitation for conversation, because I think that's how we learn the best, is if we are in community and we're having conversation. So yeah, we're not like we're the it. We're like, we are in it with you, and we want to be involved in conversations with you because we're learning and we're journeying just like you are. Right,
exactly. And I think that this second part to grace came out of that, is what we realized. So with that, let's get into it. So I have a few talking points, and I just want to I'll just read them, and then we can chime in about them. Okay, so first, number one, grace doesn't mean anarchy. That was one thing that we talked about. And then the verse that came up with that was Romans 6:1-2, which reads, "What shall we say then? Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? By no means. We are those who have died to sin. How can we live in it any longer?" And then the point I have here is the difference between license, doing whatever we want, and liberty, freedom to do what is right. And I think that's was my realization, and the point that I wanted to get across is the freedom to do what's right is what I found in grace.
Yeah, I have 4 kids, and I realize that sometimes you let them do something and then they just kind of do it on their own, and it becomes something where they're kind of taking advantage of you. And I had a situation when I was in high school. We had an English teacher that let us have a party one time, and then we just started planning for parties all the time without asking for permission. And it was like you had gotten this grace for the first one. You had a conversation, but now we're assuming something, and we're just kind of taking advantage of it. And I can see that in my own personal walk with Christ is where sometimes it's not conscious, but you're like, well, this isn't that big a deal. And, there's grace and you just do it anyway. And really wanted to talk about, it's not a license. It's not a hall pass. It's not a free pass. It's something that we have to take responsibility for too.
Right. One of the other points here, misunderstanding grace can lead to complacency. And I'd like to bring that back to our first conversation when we talked about the character of God, how we found that misunderstanding the character of God can skew our view of who God is.
Well, the way we see things determine what we do about them or our actions that we take. So if we have a misunderstanding of who God is, then we experience God wrongly. And if we have a misconception of grace, then we experience grace wrongly. It's so easy to think, well, this gives me freedom to do whatever I want. And it's not. And the complacency thing is that grace is the power to help you move into closeness with Christ, not just to stay the same, not just to keep sinning, which is really when we want to be complacent, is usually to keep holding on to something that we like, right, that God's asking us to give up. And we're like, but, this is my thing.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it before. I don't, why do we find comfort in I guess because it's just familiar.
It's familiar.
We find comfort in the familiar, even if the familiar's, not great.
Even if it's not great.
Yeah.
It is, our brain seeks safety, and familiarity feels safe. You're not having to figure anything out. You don't have to worry if something happens because what's going to happen every time. And our brain loves that. It feels safe that way, but we're not called to be safe.
Yeah, not called to be complacent.
Not called to be complacent.
For sure.
Boo.
Boo. Grace requires surrender, our favorite word. Grace invites us into transformation, not just forgiveness.
Yeah, I think grace is ongoing because we are supposed to be ongoing. We are on a journey of transformation, become more like Christ. And, it says that we become a new creation. Well, we don't know who that new creation is, right? That takes development. And so grace is the power behind our development as Christians.
Grace is not about earning salvation, but about surrendering to God's ongoing work in us.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. Okay, and then I have a verse here that we can read about that. Titus 2:11-12. For the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. So what does surrendering look like in our day to day?
Surrendering for me was a hard hurdle. I had a real hurdle to surrendering because one of my worldviews was that you had to know it. You needed to know everything. Nate and I talked about this from the very beginning. Our love for knowing, like we wanted to know, and so I went to college. I have an education, and it's like I should be able to figure out everything out and know exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And we're in a society right now for sure where we're independent and self-sufficient. And I realized over the last year that God calls us into dependency. And so that was a struggle. But there is so much freedom in surrendering and depending on God. It allows you to be partners with him, but where he is carrying the heavier part of the load. So like I think lately of like the oxens, because that came up sometime, and somebody said when you're yoked together, when the oxens were yoked together, one of the oxens was a bigger and more capable because he had more experience. He was older, and he's yoked together to a younger oxen who's smaller, and I kind of see that in this surrendering to God. It's like we're working together in partnership, but he's carrying the heavier load, and so I can surrender that. I can surrender to the the God that knows more than I do, and that was been difficult for me. Was like I don't have to know everything when I thought knowing everything was the secret sauce to life, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think surrendering for me is like giving up complacency. Because I think I like to be in a spot where, you know, everything's good, or if there's an issue, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to be bothered. But yeah, I think being called out of that
Yeah.
and being an active person, active in relationship, active in, you know, just whatever, just being active
Yeah.
in doing. I think that's for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you're not on the sidelines.
Right.
You're on the field,
Right.
and you've always been called to be on the field.
Or where I like to be behind the scenes,
Behind the scenes. Yeah.
pulling the strings so that the performers could look good.
You look good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
you're
Don't look at me. I'm gonna be back here doing my work.
yeah.
Okay. Does grace increase? So we've got Romans 5:20, where sin increased, grace abounded all the more. Does grace increase?
I think so.
Think so?
I think grace is bigger than any sin that grace had to be big enough to cover the sins of the world. But I think we can fall into the belief that that means we could sin more, that it's okay to sin because grace is around. It's like it's a free pass to sin.
Right. Like I said in Romans 6:2, shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase?
I think we have to give ourselves some grace. I would say that because we are learning, especially when you first come into Christ, you first come into Christianity, and you first come up against grace when you maybe had a very transactional understanding of who God was. Like, I got to be good, and then God to do this. I have to be, I have to get things right, and then God. When you were transactional, or where you just, sometimes you push what do they call it? Where you push the boundary because you want to see how bad will they retreat from me or reject me if I'm just bad enough. Like, you might have defense mechanisms that make you test things. You test your parents, you test authority. And sometimes if you're coming into Christianity, you're coming into a relationship with God, maybe you're testing him. You want to see if he really is going to keep his word about how he sees you and how you are part of his family. And so you do things that you shouldn't do. You're just trying to see if he's going to lower the hammer on you. So I think we want to give ourselves grace that we're learning, right? Like, even if we do sin because we think, well, there's plenty of grace, we have to trust that God is going to come in and redirect us with those bumper things of grace, right? That even if we're out of bounds, God's grace is big enough to redirect us, to bring us back in. And the more we have experience with God, the more we understand the grace, right? It's when we're just reading about it and we just bringing in our own old belief systems that we might get messed up. So, yeah, I think it does grow. And as it grows, our responsibility to it grows too.
Oh, yeah. That's true. I was just thinking, we might be in a position where we think we're undeserving of grace. And that takes surrender to receive grace in that situation. How might someone go about, I don't know. That seems like a difficult situation where like I think I don't deserve this.
Right.
How does that person, receive grace?
Yeah. Man, that's funny. This reminds me of a conversation I had with my dad a long time ago where he said, I've just done too much for God to want me. And it broke my heart, I really need to talk. I'm going to have to talk to my dad about this after we have this conversation, but it is the way it's a misconception of God again, right? It's that conception that there's a point in which you cannot be forgiven and you cannot be brought into God's family because you've just done too much, which would mean God is too small. If you could overdo in sin enough that God couldn't cover it, then God's tiny. And so it's just another misconception of God. To come in thinking you don't deserve it is a misconception of who you are and who God is. You are putting yourself bigger because you're thinking what you've done is greater.
Oh wow, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're putting your problems, issues, the things you're saying those are greater than who God is.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So it goes back to what you mentioned at the beginning. We have to, in the renewing of our mind, part of that renewing of our mind is how we see God.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's a fun one. Have there been times in your own walk when you've misused grace or misunderstood it?
Oh. Definitely misunderstood it. I was very judgmental. I say was because it's a process. Was mostly, sometimes still am, but I was very judgmental because I came into Christianity with the belief that it was a behavior based. And so I was like always giving myself gold stars for good behavior, even though it wasn't true. But when I would compare myself to someone else, it was like, look, I'm like, great. Like I got a five stars and they got like a 1 star. And so grace is sneaky to me, how it comes into all kinds of areas of your life when you don't realize it. And I realized that my view of myself was skewed because I was forgetting that I had needed grace too. And so that was one of the things. It's like you're judging people which means you're not seeing yourself correctly because you are fallen. For we have all sinned and fallen short of God. You are part of the all, not an exception to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, just learning to be curious about people. That's really just been something I've been developing over the last year or two. Is just that when you're so judgmental, you don't have room for grace. You don't get grace, right?
Right.
So,
grace is not a free pass. It was paid for. That was one of the things we talked about, was that, it was paid for.
Yeah. I really do feel like sometimes I want it to be like I thought of it like a hall pass. Like you just need something and somebody gives you like a hall pass of grace and you just do it. And then but it really is freedom for us, but it wasn't free. It was costly. And, that makes it important to be responsible for your choices because you don't want you don't want what Jesus did on the cross to be in vain.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you want to be responsible for your choices.
Right. Yeah. Remembering the cost gives us reverence and gratitude that leads to responsibility. And grace motivates obedience because of love, not fear.
I love that part because I was always motivated by fear.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, I'm messing up. I'm going to be in so much trouble. God's going to be so mad at me. And, grace is like.
Yeah. It goes back to, the difference between license, doing whatever we want, and liberty, freedom to do what is right.
Yeah.
I feel like that freedom comes from love. Love gives you the freedom to do what's right, whereas fear, puts you in a box.
Yeah, I love that because it is God's love. God's love for us is really why this has all happened, why there is a salvation, why there's a sacrifice that was made that we didn't have to pay for, why there is grace, is because of love. Like we were created in love, and God has just done all this to reconcile us back to him. And so I think it's maturity that allows you to see the balance of grace and responsibility. It's as we mature that we understand what God is doing and what Jesus paid. And so it's okay that we don't get it at first because we are in the process of being renewed and transformed to be more like Christ. So grace is just like a kind of feel like it's like a bubble, but it's not a bubble to keep you into something. It's a bubble to let you know you are safe and free to move in love,
Hmm.
to move in love towards other people.
Right. It's a hard concept to
It
understand, I
is.
think.
It really is.
Yeah. Uh, Grace removes pride and self righteousness. We can't boast about salvation. Humility leads to healthier relationships and leadership.
Well, that's how you started the podcast. Is I don't want to come on this podcast like I have all the answers.
Right.
That's humility, right? And it's acknowledging that you're human, and so you're limited to what you know and what you can do, but you're open to be in partnership with God to do it, to do whatever He's called you to, and you know that that's because of grace. Even salvation, we can't even do that by ourselves, and we can't walk out this life by ourselves. And when we surrender to that, then we can be humble about whatever is happening in our lives, whatever we're gaining in it, whatever outcomes we're getting. We realize that they're not just from us.
Right. That's one of the things that I found is grace allows us to be humble.
I know, because we live in a society where you want to be recognized.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Like, I know we're like saved and stuff, but I still like to get outside validation. I like it. I like if somebody says that was a great idea. I love the podcast. That was a great topic. I like when people like, I read that post and I really love what you said. There is an ego part of us that likes being seen, heard, and recognized. So I don't think that's always all bad, but if it's the only thing you're seeking, it's like, it's your motivation. Is it to be uplifted and elevated? Then that's something you need to bring to God, because at the end of the day, it's not about us. Dang it. It's not about you. And that is part of recognizing that, when they get up there and they get that Dove Award or they get that award and they acknowledge God, is because hopefully they have recognized even the talent that they have. They didn't create it. It was a gift. Mm. So no matter, us starting this podcast is our idea in quotes, but is it? Right?
I don't know. It's
No.
not.
Yeah.
No.
So what's there to be prideful about?
Right. I like that word allow. As I feel like, especially in our society, people put expectations on us. We put expectations on ourselves, to perform, to be the best. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important to be reminded that we are allowed to surrender. We're allowed to be humble.
Yeah.
We're allowed to give the glory to God.
Yeah. We're called into participation.
Right.
In partnership, not in status, like raising our own status. So I had a conversation yesterday with a girl. She's in Europe, and she says, what did she say? In organized religion, that's how she puts it. It's interesting to see other people's perspectives from different places. But she was asking me a question, and I said, well, because I think a lot of times people get it wrong. They don't understand that God has called us into a partnership with Him. And so everything that we have, that we do, all our skills, all our talents, all our gifts, those are given to us. So we are invited into a partnership by the Creator of all creators. And it allows us to participate and do things that we probably couldn't do on our own. The place where we get messed up is if we think we are the ones who are creating those opportunities and opening those doors and writing those songs or whatever it is we're doing.
Right. All right. So grace in our day-to-day, what does living under grace look like in the mundane moments?
I think grace in my mundane moments is being reminded to be thankful. Mm. If I am starting to think that I look at all this stuff I'm doing, then I know that I'm operating in some type of self-led gratification. But when I when I just look around my house and I'm just remember how I got this for $50 and God allowed me to get it, and I da da da, or how this happened or this happened, and I just start being in gratitude. That just changes everything. It changes the way I'm looking at stuff. It's changing the way I'm thinking about myself and things that are happening in my life. Gratitude, and it also helps me be more, give more grace to other people, because it is a reminder. Gratitude is a reminder that I haven't done any of this on my own, that I couldn't do my life by myself.
Right. I think gratitude, practicing gratitude is an acceptance of surrender.
I have to go say something like that, Nate. Now, dang it, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
That came from God. That wasn't me.
Yeah. Grace is it feels ungangly, like it's got so many different parts. It feels like it's not just a linear line that you can just say, well, grace. It does make you think about all different aspects of life and areas of growth with God. Like grace is the thing that God gives you just to empower you, but it's also the thing God gives you that feels like a hug. Grace is the thing that God gives you that cause you to be creative, but grace is also the thing that causes you to be humble about being creative. So I hope this conversation, if it has done anything as make people curious to start thinking about grace in their own lives, having conversations with their own friends about like how grace shows up, because it's not like a one and done conversation, because grace is just so amazing and magnificent.
And we talked about the responsibility of grace. And then I wanted to read this last statement. Grace transforms us into participants in God's redemptive work, not passive recipients.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
And
about
that's good.
participating, being a part of God's work. That's we talked about beforehand that's the reward. We think the reward is to receive something.
Yeah.
But God calls us into helping or being a part of his mission, and that's the reward.
Yeah. Yes. I think, yeah, that's if we're going to come out of this conversation with anything, it's like grace isn't a free pass for sinning, because to keep sinning after receiving Christ means you're devaluing the sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross. And so what you have to be responsible for, right? It's like, it's okay when you didn't know, but once you do know, you want to change, you want to align yourself with what God thinks and what God says. But the other thing is, like, all the things that we have, the houses and the cars and the jobs and the families, all the things that God has allowed us and has given us are so amazing and awesome. But the real prize of anything is our relationship with God, and that he sees us special enough to be in partnership with him, be a part of his family, is the gift, and we can never lose it. It's always going to be there, no matter what we do.
All right. To finish this off, I have a few questions. So what's the difference between abusing grace and living it?
Abusing grace is thinking that you can get away with whatever you want. Grace is grace, but it also has parameters. It has boundaries. And abusing it is just trying to utilize it for your own self.
How can grace feel uncomfortable or even frustrating when it calls us to accountability?
I was frustrated by grace when I thought all I needed to do was keep a certain checklist, and God's like, no, that's not how I want you to see me, and that's not how I see you. And
I think that goes back to the person who thinks that they don't deserve grace.
Yeah, I thought you had to earn God's acceptance and approval, and so grace was a very foreign concept. I didn't really get it. I still wrestle with the goodness of God, and that is an aspect of grace. It's from God's goodness. I'm like, I don't get this. Like, why aren't you mad? Or why isn't there? But I'm not saying that there are no consequences, because there's always some type of consequences. But in God's economy, the consequence is usually maybe you're going to suffer through something, but it comes with a nugget of you're going to grow and learn something too, and God's still going to be with you. You're still worthy of Him, even if you mess up. And that was a weird thing to receive.
Mm. When have you experienced grace leading you to change rather than coast?
I think you should answer that question.
Okay. When I've experienced grace leading me to change rather than coast. So I think, again, with complacency, um, 'cause that's similar to coasting. You know, experiencing grace has given me a new perspective on Christianity and on life. And I find that, I can receive grace and I can extend it in my day to day. And I think, serving a community was, just being able to serve a community. That was big for me
Right.
in my growth.
Yeah.
With the relationships with people within the community, with my relationship with Christ. So I think grace allowed me to step outside of myself.
Yes.
And to be a part of the work that I feel like God's calling me to do.
It expanded your parameters and it made you force you out of your comfort zone. I had a mindset problem around money, and I was in a pattern about spending and saving and overspending or whatever. And over the last year, God has called me out of that continual loop of how I was seeing it. First of all things come from God. So it's not like I have to try to get things, right? God provides. So it's not my sole responsibility to create anything that I need, because God says, why are you worried about this? I know what you need and I'm going to provide for you. But I had such a long relationship with thinking that I had to hustle for stuff. I needed to make things happen. I needed to get people to work with, that God really had to walk with me for the last year to surrender and to trust and to depend on Him. That didn't mean I didn't have to do things, but it meant the way I looked at Him and the things was different. And that I see that now when I was like having like, I'm so stressed out. That was grace. That was His grace changing something in my life that was really controlling me and allowing me to see that I could surrender it to Him and He could carry it. And then I could learn a new way to see things and how to deal with it. So, yeah.
I think opposite for me, whereas like you felt like you needed to do everything. I think I was just waiting to be rescued.
Oh.
And I was thinking of a quote my dad used to always tell me. He used to say, God can't steer a parked car, and I would always respond with, my car doesn't even have an engine.
Oh my gosh.
But I think back through my life and stuff, and I think God was, He was in the back. He was building an engine for me.
I just heard that quote like in the last week, and I think that's so interesting. I love how we are kind of opposites, but we're here in the same spot talking about the same thing. But yeah, the fact that you're like, oh, I don't even know if that's called surrender though. You're like, I'm just sitting here waiting to receive whatever you're going to do.
Right. Oh yeah. And I had a moment where I was sitting in church and I was like, why is nobody coming up to talking to me? Nobody's, I feel so alone. Nobody's coming up and talking to me saying, hey, or whatever. And then I think God just like talked to me in that moment and said, it goes both ways. You can talk to people too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it really ties into what you've been saying about He calls us into participation. If you're a parked car without an engine, you're not participating in anything. You can't move. You can't go. You can't be steered. You can't be directed because there's no movement. And I hear a lot about like faith is when you step out first. Like God doesn't tell you the whole plan. And when He calls you into participating, it's like He calls you to something and you make a step and then you see the next step. But God, like your dad said, you have to be in motion, and that requires getting out of your complacency.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my hurdle was, I believed it that, I didn't have an engine.
Yeah.
And then I totally believed that, God, he was in the back putting one together. And it took me, recognizing and seeing that, and then, hearing God call out to me to say, you can talk to people too. I think that was like the connection between, all right, let's get this engine in the car and let's get going,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. You are equipped, Nate. That's what he said. You are now equipped.
Yeah.
Listen, I got an engine in here. You can move.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. All righty. Thank you.
Awesome. I love it.
Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Just be curious and be open to what God's showing you next. It's going to take you out of your comfort zone. And in Nate's case, that's what he needed. And in my case, it needed to take me out of my thinking I couldn't be still, that I had to do everything and I had to figure it all out. So God is always working, and he's always working for us because God is good.
We would love for you to be a part of the conversation. If you have anything you would like to add or share, you can leave us a comment or email at egcfpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. How was your morning?
Oh, it was good. I went walking at a walking park this morning. So usually I walk on a street. The walking park was really cool because I didn't have to worry about traffic, and it was a new visual. Like it looked like fall, like we live somewhere else.
Oh, nice.
Different leaf colors. That was fun.
Wow, where was that?
And on Balboa.
Balboa? Okay, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it was fun.
I've been there a few times.
I got my 3 miles in. I'm
Nice.
proud.
Nice. I did. I had a app I downloaded 2 years ago, and this month I finally completed it. It's the walk that Frodo and Sam took from Hobbiton to Mordor, and it took me 2 years to complete it. But I just got it done this month.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Congratulations. So
Yeah.
does that make you a hobbit?
I guess so. Maybe half a hobbit. It took them a year.
Oh.
Yeah.
Smaller than a hobbit then.
I think it averaged like 2 miles a day.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Be proud anyway. Just take it. Just take it as a win.
Yeah, it was a fun achievement. It was fun having something, I started 2 years ago and
Yeah.
being able to finish that.
We can look at it as you're consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, slow, but consistent.
Consistently slow.
That's the way to put it.
Yeah.